Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making time to be here today. I know work can get really busy and draining, so I'm grateful that we get this space to pause and reflect a little. Today, we'll talk about something that's really at the heart of Ignatian spirituality, finding God in all things. Now, I know when we hear that phrase, it can sound a bit deep or abstract. Paano ba mahanap ang Diyos sa lahat ng bagay? What does that even mean? Let's start with a simple line from Saint Ignatius himself. God dwells in all created things on the face of the earth. Galing to sa spiritual exercises ni Saint Ignatius. And nananahan ang Diyos sa lahat ng nilikha sa mundo. In other words, God is not just confined to the church or to prayer time or sa mga obviously religious moments. Hindi lang natin siya mahanap sa tahimik na retreat o sa pag-attend ng Culture Day Soul Session tulad nito. God is also in the ordinary. God is present in the mess, the noise, the routines, and even the boredom. Yes, even sa traffic sa EDSA, pati na rin sa init ng panahon. Ang init ngayong summer, di ba? Even sa pagod sa trabaho, when all you want to do is go home and sleep, but there's one more meeting or email to finish. God is present when you sit down to rest and sip your coffee, even if you're alone. Or in that 5-minute laugh you share with your team after a stressful day. Minsan nga, hindi mo na kailangan sabihin ang pangalan ng Diyos. You just feel a kind of presence, a peace, or even a challenge, or a sense of awe. Maybe God's there. Hindi palaging dramatic. Hindi palaging over the top. Hindi palaging kailangan ng glow or thunderclap. Hindi laging COA. Minsan, simple lang. Pero totoo. What Ignatius is inviting us into is a kind of awareness. Bawat sandali, bawat tao, bawat karanasan, nariyan ang Diyos. All of creation, all of reality can become a place of encountering God. So today we'll explore how we can train our eyes, our hearts, and even our daily habits to notice God more in the very lives we're already living. Siguro we can go back to the very beginning, no? Genesis. Sa simula pa lang ng kwento ng pananampalataya, we're told that God created the world, the skies, the seas, the land, the animals, the trees, and finally, human beings. And after every act of creation, anong sinabi ng Diyos? It is good. At sa huli, nung natapos na ang lahat, it is very good. Hindi lang okay na yan. Hindi lang pwede na. Talagang maganda, talagang mabuti, talagang may halaga. And because of this, the church teaches us what's called the principle of sacramentality. This simply means everything in creation has the potential to be placed where we encounter God. Hindi lang sa simbahan, hindi lang sa Bible, pati nature, pati relationships, pati mga bagay na akala natin wala lang. Lahat ito pwedeng maging paraan ng Diyos para makipag-ugnayan sa atin. Let me ask, have you ever watched a sunset after a long, stressful day and felt something loosen in your chest? Or habang nasa jeep ka, may batang kumakanta, hindi masyadong magaling, pero may sincerity. Tapos bigla kang napangiti. Or nakita mo yung anak mo, natutulog, gusot-gusot yung kumot, pero anghel sa paningin mo. At sabi mo, thank you, Lord. That's what we call a sacramental moment. May pagkilos ng Diyos sa puso mo. You're moved, you're reminded, you're brought back to wonder, gratitude, peace. Sometimes it's in the big things like beautiful landscapes or the birth of a child. Sometimes it's small, like the smell of newly cooked rice or the way someone sincerely asks, kumain ka na ba? In Ignatian spirituality, walang maliit sa Diyos. Everything matters, everything speaks. We just need to learn how to listen, not just with our ears, but with our attention and our presence. This reflects a trust that God communicates through creation. Daily experiences and human interactions, revealing divine love and wisdom, even in the ordinary and in the unexpected. Kaya nga sinasabi natin, God is in all things. Because all of creation, kung titignan natin ng maigi, all of it ay isang panyaya, a gentle invitation. A reminder that the world is charged with the presence of God, just waiting to be noticed. So the next time something ordinary makes you pause, or breathe a little deeper, or feel grateful, don't brush it off. Maybe that's not just a moment. Maybe that's God saying hello. Isa pang basis ng finding God in all things is this very central mystery of faith known as the Incarnation. Mahanap natin to sa Gospel of John. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Ang Diyos ay nagkatawang tao, and this is what we call the Incarnation. Hindi siya nanatili lang sa langit. Instead, He chose to come down to live a human life like ours. He was born in a manger sa sabsaban, sama ang mga hayop, at buong buhay niya, nakihalubilo siya sa mga ordinaryo, sa mga sinasabing hindi karapat-dapat. Mga mangingisda, taga-kolekta ng buwis, mga ketongin, mga babae, mga bata, mga inaapi ng lipunan. And here's the amazing part. Jesus met people where they were. Hindi niya pinilit silang maging perfect bago niya sila nilapitan. Kaya kung totoong incarnation, kung totoo na ang Diyos ay pumapasok sa ating mundo, then it means something really powerful. God can meet you exactly where you are. Yes, kahit ngayon. Kahit pagod ka na, kahit wala ka ng gana, kahit nag-worry ka sa mga bayarin, kahit nalilito ka na sa direksyon ng buhay mo, God meets you in that exact place, not later, but now. Jesus' public ministry consistently demonstrated God's active presence in daily life. Kung isipin nyo, yung buhay ni Jesus, pattern rin yan eh. Healing the sick, attending weddings, dining with sinners, calming storms, and teaching in fields and homes. If Jesus truly sat with tax collectors and touched lepers, then surely He can walk with you while you're answering your emails. He can be with you habang nag-iintay sa LRT. He can be present habang naglalaba ka o habang nag-iisip ka kung anong kakainin mo this week. This is what makes Ignatian spirituality so human. Walang compartmentalization na ito lang yung spiritual, tas yung iba hindi. Lahat may potential maging sagrado. So the next time you feel like you're too far from God or like your life is too messy, too busy, too ordinary, pause for a moment and remember, Jesus entered exactly this kind of life. God's love is able to transcend the seeming threshold or boundary between our human lives and the divine. God loved us all so much that He became human just like us. And He's still entering in our world even now. If the Incarnation is truly real, then everything, and I mean everything, can be a place where God is. Now, let's connect. Of course, a lot of that is can be deep talk, but let's connect all of what I've mentioned a while ago, creation, the Incarnation, with something very practical. Our responsibility to each other, all fellow creatures on earth. Ang isa pang basis ng finding God in all things is yung Catholic social teaching. Minsan, kapag sinasabi natin yung word na spirituality, ang iniisip natin agad ay prayer or retreat or tahimik na pagninilay. But sa Ignatian spirituality, prayer and action go hand in hand. Ang pananampalataya ay hindi hiwalay sa kung paano tayo nakikitungo sa kapwa, kung paano tayo namumuhay sa mundo. The church gives us Catholic social teaching or CST, which reminds us that spirituality isn't just personal, it's also relational and social. And meron 3 principles dito na mahalaga. Kung siseryosohin natin yung finding God in all things, principles such as the dignity of the human person, option for the poor, and care for creation, invite us to faithfully recognize God's presence in every individual, especially the marginalized and other created reality. So siguro, titignan ko one at a time yung mga principles na to para connect sila sa finding God in all things. So unang-una sa lahat, siguro yung human dignity muna. Lahat ng tao ay mahalaga, walang exception. Hindi dahil manager ka, mas mahalaga kayo sa janitor. Hindi dahil may degree ka, mas mataas ka sa delivery rider. Every person is sacred, kahit sino, kahit saan, kahit na noong background. Kaya pag nirerespeto natin ang tao, kapitbahay, kasambahay, kliyente, security guard, family member, we are encountering God. Another principle is yung option for the poor. Sa puso ng Diyos, may espesyal na lugar ang mga naaapi, ang mga mahihirap, ang mga walang boses. In the Gospels, lagi nating nakikita si Jesus na pumapanig sa mga walang kapangyarihan. But ibig sabihin ba nito na may favorites si God? I'm not sure if familiar kayo sa movie na Four Sisters and the Wedding. Pero may portion doon na tinanong nung mom, nung mga magkakapatid, are you saying that I'm unfair? Kasi may favorites daw siya. Pero sanabi ni Bobby, ayan, no ma, I'm saying you have your favorites. And in a way, totoo rin naman, may favorites rin naman ng Diyos but not in the way we think. Hindi ibig sabihin na mas mahal niya ang mga naapi, ang mga marginalized, ay this is for no good reason. Kundi mas kailangan nila maramdaman ng kanyang pagmamahal dahil sa sitwasyon nila. Kaya kung may ginagawa tayo para sa nangangailangan, nagbibigay ng oras, resources, kahit simpleng pakikinig lang, we are not just being kind. We're actually responding to God's presence in the lives of those people. And yung last na principle ng Catholic social teaching na linked sa finding God in all things ay yung care for creation. Dahil ang mundo na tinatawag ng Diyos na very good, ay hindi lang tahanan natin, but it's also where we encounter God. Kapag sinira natin ang kalikasan, hindi lang tayo nagiging irresponsible, parang sinisira na rin natin ang lugar kung saan inienkwentro natin ang Diyos. Simple actions like reducing waste, reusing, or even supporting local farmers are not just eco-friendly acts, but they're also spiritual acts as well. Hindi hiwalay ang trabaho natin, ang pamilya natin, ang kalikasan, ang lipunan sa relasyon natin sa Diyos. Ang lahat ng ito ay parte ng paanyaya ng Diyos sa atin. Hanapin siya, paglingkuran siya, mahalin siya sa lahat ng bagay. So now, those were some preliminary principles about finding God in all things. Pero siguro, to better help people get a better sense of what finding God in all things means, I'll introduce you to 3 parang quick principles to better get an idea of what this idea from St. Ignatius is all about. So, yung 3 principles na to are attention, reverence, and devotion. And pag na-practice natin tong 3 to, I think that we'll get a better sense of what finding God in all things is all about. So, maybe I can start with the first one. What do you mean when we say attention? And how does attention link to finding God in all things? Siguro yung first way of understanding attention is yung attentiveness. Attentive ba tayo? Sa dami ng nangyayari sa mundo natin ngayon, traffic, deadlines, group chats, notifications, reels, stories. It's so easy to go through a whole day without really seeing anything. Nandyan ka physically pero pwedeng lutang ka. Automatic, naka-default mode. But in Ignatian spirituality, attention is sacred. Howard Gray, a Jesuit thinker, said that living a life attuned to God starts with a simple act. Be present, pay attention. Be present, pay attention. At hindi lang ito yung parang, ay, napansin ko lang. It's deep attention. A long and loving look at the real. Let's say you're talking to a coworker over lunch. You could, while talking to them, scroll through your phone while they speak, or you could put your phone down, look at them, and truly listen. You might discover something sacred in that moment. I don't know if people have watched Wicked. Familiar ba kayo sa Wicked? Anyway, there's this movie last year called Wicked. It stars Ariana Grande. I'm not sure if you know who Ariana Grande is. Sana naman, kilala niyo siya. But this is Cynthia Erivo. And there was a meme that happened last year. It's called Holding Space. So naging meme sila, nag-viral sila ni Ariana Grande. And this phrase became something that was like popular in the internet. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng holding space? So aside from being a meme, that phrase suddenly acquired a new meaning, and I think for us, baka pwede rin nating magamit ng konti yung holding space. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng holding space? Holding space means making room for someone's reality to exist without judgment and without interruption. And honestly, ginagawa naman natin to more than we think. For example, may office mate kang obvious na pagod na, stressed, at hindi mo alam kung anong sasabihin. So, instead of just trying to cheer them up or change the topic, you sit with them, pwedeng tahimik lang, maybe offer water or your quiet presence. That's holding space. Or may kaibigan kang umiiyak, hindi mo kailangan sabihin, uy, okay lang yan. Actually, minsan, mas nakakagulo pa nga yun. Sometimes, the most spiritual thing you can do is just stay. To simply say, andito lang ako. That kind of attention is sacred. And in Ignatian spirituality, it is in that kind of attentiveness, the willingness to hold space for what is real, what is painful, what is joyful, that we may begin to notice how God moves. Hindi siya flashy, hindi palaging may sagot, but it's real and it's deeply spiritual. So the next time you're tempted to distract yourself or to fix someone else's mood, maybe try instead to hold space for your own feelings, for the person in front of you, for the moment as it is. Because God doesn't just show up in solutions. Sometimes He shows up in our silence, in our stillness, in our attention. That too is real, and that too is a window for God. Let's put it this way. Let that person, that story, that injustice, that experiment, that moment be as fully itself as possible in your presence. That's what attentiveness, that's what attention is all about. Not only to control it, not to judge it agad, not to move on too quickly, but to let it be, to stay with it. To be still long enough for it to speak to you. Of course, that's hard, di ba? We live in a world na sanay sa instant noodles, instant message, instant relief. So when something's painful, rejection, failure, confusion, we try to escape. Binge watch, scroll ng scroll, daydreaming, fantasizing. But Ignatius invites us, no, stay with the real, even if it's messy, even if it hurts. Because it's only when we stay, when we pay attention, not just with our eyes, but with our hearts, that we begin to see God at work. Maybe through someone's struggle, maybe in your own tiredness, maybe in a moment of quiet in the elevator where you suddenly remember something good and it warms your chest. Attentiveness is not about being present on the terms of the other. It's about not intruding with our judgments or biases or distractions. It's about trusting that if we really pay attention, God will show up. So maybe today, after this session, you can try it. When someone speaks to you, really listen. When you eat, really taste. When you pray, don't rush. Because you don't need to go far to find God. You just need to pay attention. Sige, let's move on to the next principle. Kung ang attention ay pagtutok, ang reverence naman ay yung pagtanggap. So attention, tutukan natin. Reverence, tanggapin natin. Hindi lang basta nakita mo na ang totoo, kundi tinanggap mo ito, kahit mahirap, kahit hindi ayon sa inaasahan mo. Father Michael J. Himes puts it beautifully. Reverence is seeing not what you wish were there or what others told you to expect, but seeing what is truly there and letting it be. In other words, hindi lang projection mo dun sa mga bagay-bagay around you, sa mga tao around you, hindi assumption, hindi label. You strip away your filters, whatever biases, fears, yung gusto mong makita, and you let whatever person, situation, or experience speak for itself. So instead of imposing what you want things to be, you just let things be by themselves. Reverence is letting the other be other. Okay? That's hard kasi syempre sa buhay natin, ang tendency is to make snap judgments or first impressions really matter, di ba? And so, sanay tayo na makategorize yung mga tao around us, ay toxic yan, ay mayabang yan, hindi ko yan ka-vibes, hindi ko siya type. But Ignatian spirituality invites us to see with fresh eyes, especially things that seem at first like something that we would not even bother to check out, to look, to engage, to encounter. We look at every person not as a type, not as a problem, not as a role, but as unique, unrepeatable, beloved children of God. Reverence means seeing each person as unprecedented. What does that mean? Walang ibang kapareho yung taong yan. Hindi sila checklist at hindi sila project. At lalong-lalo sa lahat, hindi sila issue. They are mystery. Sige, I'll give an example. Have you ever taken time to really listen to someone you disagree with? Kasi syempre, di ba? Whether it's work, or sa bahay, or sa neighborhood, hindi naman lagit-lagi you'll agree with people around you. Will you listen to them without trying to win or correct them, just to understand? Minsan mahirap yun, especially if yung tendency nga natin is hindi natin masyadong type yung taong yan. But sometimes you will learn something new even from people that you disagree with, even from people that you did not expect. Or for example, have you ever allowed your child or your spouse or parent to be different from you and still love them, not in spite of those differences, but through those differences? Have you ever stopped trying to fix someone and instead you realized hindi naman pala kailangan i-fix? You simply allow them to tell their story in their own words. That's reverence. That's the heart of contemplative listening. And I think sa pinaka-core ng reverence ay yung contemplative seeing, contemplative listening, being able to let things just be. And here's the thing. Pagka nag-contemplative listening ka, that requires vulnerability kasi you give up a bit of the control that you have. You're not in control. You don't get to define the meaning for others. It's openness without the armor. Reverence is not just about noticing something. It's about accepting it, letting it speak, and being changed by it. Even if the thing that you're encountering or the person you're encountering is unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Ano kayang way of understanding natin? Believe it or not, ang isang magandang example is improv. I'm not sure if you've heard of improv before. Ang tawag dito, improvisational comedy. Okay? I think most comedians, meron silang background in improv kasi kailangan magaling kang mag-adjust sa nangyayari or sa situation. Pagka nasa comedy show ka, for example, sa improv, merong golden rule. Kung ano man yung ibato sa'yo, ang sagot mo, yes and. Okay. And mahirap yun kasi syempre, pagka, if you place yourself in that position, especially if you're a comedian, you're opening up yourself to the possibility na, ay, baka magkamali ako, or baka hindi magland yung joke, or something of that sort. But in improv, kahit na anong mangyari, ang sagot mo sa situation is, yes and. Yes and. Picture this in an improv show. Performers stand when they're introduced and they take turns asking the audience for a variety of things. A province in the Philippines, a kind of music, a setting, and the word. Sigaw naman yung audience. Masbate, electronica, nuclear power plant, panda. Pag improv, kahit na anong sabihin ng audience, go ka dun. Kailangan tanggapin mo. So suddenly, we have a story about an heiress from Masbate who sings her emotions through electronica inside a nuclear power plant during a wild panda outbreak. Grabe, parang walang sense at first. But if you've ever watched an improv comedy show, talagang nag-work. Magaling yung mga tao. If they're really good at improv, they can actually adapt to the situation. That's the beauty of it, I think. And for the most part, good improv troupes can turn chaos into order and make it hilarious in the process. And they say, yes, and. I think reverence is what happens when we allow other people's truths, other people's stories to unfold on their own terms. And instead of yung sagot natin, ay parang mali yan, or I have my own opinion, and then sabihin may opinion mo. I think for the most part, one of the things that we're taught here is, bago mo i-judge or before you jump into it, in your mind you say, yes, and. Instead of shutting someone down, ay, toxic na person yan, we say, yes, may pinagdadaanan siya eh. And I wonder what's behind that. Instead of judging quickly, ang OA naman niya, we say, yes, expressive siya. And baka kailangan lang talaga niya to be heard. Reverence is saying yes to who people really are and making space for their truth to be seen, heard, and held. So the next time you're in a moment where your instinct is to judge, to categorize, to dismiss, or to put people in boxes, try improv. Try saying yes and. You might be surprised how much more sacred and how much more human the moment can become. I'd like to think na attention is about opening our eyes. Thus, reverence is about opening our heart. And when we do this, when we finally accept reality as it is and people as they are, we open ourselves to a deeper presence of God. We give it room to reveal something sacred. When talking about attention, it's about being present. When we talk about reverence, it's about letting people, the world, and moments be what they truly are. Yung third movement naman is called devotion. Sa Ignatian spirituality, devotion doesn't just simply mean yung pagiging devotional lang, like praying the rosary or going to mass daily. Those are also good and important things. What devotion means here is a moment of deep personal connection. It's that privileged experience when something lands, hindi lang sa isip, pero pati sa puso. Howard Gray calls it the privileged moment of personal revelation. Minsan, nararamdaman mo ito as peace. Parang biglang lumilinaw. Aha, ito pala ang tawag sa akin. Minsan, it's a surprising moment of clarity about Jesus. Mercy, his character, his closeness. But sometimes, moments of devotion aren't gentle. Sometimes it's like holding up a mirror and seeing something hard to accept. Like, bigla mong napansin, grabe, hindi pala align ng sinasabi ko, na pinaniniwalaan ko, at ang totoong ginagawa ko sa buhay. That too is devotion. Devotion is not just about comfort, it's about truth. Whether that truth consoles you or confronts you. And when you've truly paid attention, when you've truly held space with reverence, sometimes the moment speaks back to you. Maybe after listening to your coworker's struggle, you're suddenly moved to apologize for how you've been distant to them. Or maybe after reverently reflecting on something like climate change, something clicks and you decide, siguro hindi na ako gagamit ng single-use plastic. Maybe after holding your baby niece, watching her sleep, you suddenly feel this overwhelming awe. This is holy, this is life. That's devotion. It's not always fireworks. Sometimes it's slow burn. Sometimes it's just knowing deep down that God was in that moment, and that moment is asking something of you. In doing so, little by little, we grow in our capacity to find God in all things. Not just once, but again and again, in the rhythm of daily life. Kaya nga tinatawag tayong maging contemplatives in action. People who don't run away from reality, but enter into it with eyes of faith, the heart of reverence, and the soul of devotion. So far, we've gone through the three movements, attention, reverence, and devotion. But in practice, paano ba natin ginagawa yung magiging attentive, magiging reverent, magiging devoted sa sarili nating buhay, and in doing so, finding God in all things? So siguro yung best na may offer ko in terms of like a practical advice is to use something called the Ignatian Examen. Kanina meron tayong spiritual exercise na prayer, di ba? We sat down, we actually put our mind to being attentive to how things were. And the Ignatian Examen is actually practically like that. In a short way of praying, you're actually invited to try and be attentive, to revere and be devoted in whatever life that you're living at the moment. The Ignatian Examen is the way. It's a simple 5-step spiritual practice. Hindi prayer na may script. It's not a formulaic prayer, but it's a reflection sa puso mo. And it doesn't have to take a long time. In fact, you can actually just do it in as little as 5 minutes. There are many different kinds of examen, pero the one that I'll give you is a 5-step one that I found most helpful, especially in my own life. So the 5 steps are pray for light, review the day in thanksgiving, review the feelings that surface in the replay of the day, focus on one of those feelings and pray from it, and look toward tomorrow. Yung mnemonic na ginawa nung author nung this particular version of the examen is LT3F. So light, thanksgiving, feelings, focus, and future. So yun yung pattern ng prayer. So for example, at the end of a day, what you can do is sit down and try to practice the Ignatian Examen to try and find where God is in the day that you've just had. So you can start with the first step. The first step is praying for light. Humingi ng liwanag upang makahingi ng kaliwanagan. Lord, tulungan mo akong makita ang araw ko sa mata mo. Hindi lang basta anong nangyayari, pero paano ito naging mahalaga? Tulungan mo akong makita hindi lang ang totoo, kundi ang katotohanan na may pag-ibig. So, since we're not simply daydreaming or reminiscing, but rather looking for some sense of how the Spirit of God is leading us, it only makes sense to pray for some illumination first. So, start the examen with a kind of prayer for light so that your eyes will be open. Doon nagsimula yung examen. And you can actually do this in your own way. You can create your own praying for light. How do you pray for light? It's up to you. The next step is review with thanks. So thanksgiving, gratitude, magpasalamat. So when you're trying to review your day in your Ignatian Examen prayer, alalahanin, saan ko naranasan yung biyaya? Kaninong presensya ang naging regalo sa akin in this day? Pwede itong simpleng bagay, masarap na kape, tahimik na commute, ngiti ng kasamahan mo sa office. Walang maliit sa Diyos. Gratitude is the foundation of our whole relationship with God. What you can do is you can walk through the past 24 hours, from hour to hour, from place to place, task to task, person to person, thanking the Lord for every gift you encounter. I think one of the benefits of this kind of approach is not only do you get to look back at your day, but also realize how, in so many ways, nandun pala yung gift of God. And there's that sense of giftedness in our lives na blessed pala tayo. Madalas ginagamit yung #blessed sa social media. And I think this one is not just for show. It's really a recognition that in your life, meron palang blessedness yung buhay natin. And then the third step is feelings. So yung una, light. So yung pangalawa, thanksgiving. The third step when praying the Ignatian Examen is feelings. Balikan mo yung buong araw, mula pagising hanggang ngayon, hindi para i-judge yung sarili, kundi para obserbahan. Saan ako naging buhay? Saan ako naging sarado? Kailan ako nagbigay? Kailan ako nagtago? Look at patterns of feelings and don't moralize, just notice. Our feelings, positive and negative, signal to us where the action was during the day. So some examples. At what point in the day did you feel delight or boredom, fear, anticipation, resentment, anger, peace, contentment, impatience, desire, hope, regret, shame or uncertainty, compassion, disgust, gratitude, pride, rage, doubt, confidence, and shyness. So all of these very complex feelings, they help signal to someone, whether they're positive or negative, that there was something important happening during the day. So be attentive to the feeling. And then, once you've identified your feelings, you need to focus on just one. And that's why there's the next step is called focus. When we say focus, choose the remembered feeling from the previous step that most caught your attention. That feeling is a sign that something important was going on in your day. Now, simply express spontaneously, in your own words, the prayer that surfaces as you attend to the source of that one feeling. And the prayer can be anything. It could be praise, petition, contrition, a cry for help or healing, whatever it may be. As long as it comes from your heart, then that can be the next step. Kapag may napansin ka, pasasalamat ba ito, panghihinayang, saan ka tinatawag ng Diyos ngayon, anong tugon ang ibubulong sa'yo ng puso mo? Maybe it's an invitation to rest. Maybe it's a nudge to ask forgiveness. Maybe it's simply to pause or to breathe. But whatever it is, that is the focus, make sure to focus just on one. Focus just on one. And that will be what you pray for during the examen. And finally, kumbaga, ihandog mo ang iyong bukas, look to your tomorrow, look to your future. And that's what the last step is, future. Lord, samahan mo ako bukas, nandun ka rin. Tulungan mo akong maging bukas sa bukas. Hindi natin hawak ang mangyayari, pero pwede tayong pumasok sa kinabukasan kasama ang Diyos. So one of the things that I found very helpful in my own experience is when I pray the examen, I have my calendar with me. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, no? Kasi parang pag nakita mo yung calendar, puro trabaho yun nandun. So, but I think it's quite helpful. You face your immediate future, even and most especially if that future can contain a lot of work, a lot of stress sometimes. But I think the Ignatian Examen also lets us be open. Remember, a while ago, one of the principles is reverence. Yes, and. Yes, and. So, using your appointment calendar, if that helps, face your immediate future. Whatever it is, turn it into prayer. For help, for healing, whatever comes spontaneously. And so, after writing down in your calendar what needs to be done in light of your prayer, the last thing that you do is round off the examen by saying the Lord's Prayer. So those are the 5 steps for the examen. Light, thanksgiving, feelings, focus, and future. And madali lang naman siya maalala. L, T, and then 3 F. F, F, F. Okay. So I found this to be most helpful for me. I've been praying the examen since I found out about it in my time in college a decade ago. But I found that it really helped with regards to being attentive and understanding where God might be found in my day. Because I think sometimes we get to a point where it might be easy to just ignore where God might be in one's day. Besides, there are many other more important, quote-unquote, things to do. But the Ignatian Examen helps actually reconfigure, recalibrate, and put our attention where it matters most, which is that God is in all of the things that have actually happened throughout that day that we've had. Maybe just to end the talk that I've had today, I'll give a gentle send-off. Maybe today, we won't walk away with all the answers, but I hope we leave with better questions. Where did I see God today? Who did I pay attention to, and who did I ignore? What moment asked me to pause, to listen, to change? Ignatian spirituality reminds us, God is not far. God is not hidden. God is in the laughter at the pantry, the stress of deadlines, the quiet elevator rides. Sa dulo ng araw, pagod ka na, pero may peace pa rin naman. Ang tanong lang, handa ba tayong mapansin siya? Will we allow ourselves to slow down, to open our hearts, and find God not just in the big things, but in all things? I have some questions for reflection that might be helpful moving to the next part. But with that said, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our talk today. Maraming salamat. May you continue to live, work, and love with eyes wide open. Thank you.